Hello there, you're watching Debrief on CNN News 18. I'm Maha, Siddiqui. The news of the possible snooping in India on politicians, journalists and activists is now snowballing into a big controversy. With fresh revelations that Congress MP Rahul Gandhi was also on the Pegasus list, the opposition is up in arms, demanding a joint parliamentary committee probe. Parliament was disrupted today even as the government denied allegations and said no unauthorized surveillance has happened. So what is this surveillance like? Who instructed it? Who were the potential targets? And how alarming is this? Can it subvert the democracy itself? Over the next half an hour, we'll attempt to answer all those questions. But first, let's try and understand the controversy itself. A consortium of 17 news organizations came together to unearth a covert surveillance system used across several countries globally. India's named two figures in the list. From Rahul Gandhi to Prashant Kishore to the government's own ministers like Ashwini Vaishnav and Prahlad Patel. Names of some big figures have found their spot in that list for potentials of surveillance. The Pegasus list is varied and long and raises serious questions about not just privacy but also democracy and dissenting voices. Were these hacks done strategically? How have those on the list reacted? Pallavi Ghosh and Ritanshu Bhattacharya get us these details.
Politicians, ministers, election strategists, election commissioners. The Pegasus spy list spares no one and names all. The big headline, Rahul Gandhi. Yes, the man who was tasked with leading the Congress party to glory in the 2019 Lok Sabha elections was apparently being snooped upon while he was the party president. Rahul's response on Twitter was swift mocking what he called the Bharatiya Jasoos party. Rahul Gandhi wasn't the only victim of election snooping, going by the Pegasus leaks. 2 years later, when the nation was embroiled in a bitter battle for Bengal, the man seen by many as the political heir of the West Bengal Chief Minister, Abhishek Banerjee too, had his phone apparently on surveillance. Mamata Banerjee's nephew was no less scathing in his criticism on Twitter. Also on the list, not just politicians, but also their backroom advisors. Prashant Kishore, arguably the most political non-politician in the country today, was also reportedly spied on in election season. The man who has led many a politician to electoral glory was reportedly on the surveillance radar while managing the TMC's campaign in Bengal earlier this year. But what's really got politicians and activists irate is the fact that the snooping ring reportedly extends to not just participants, but also the referees. Ashok Lavasa, one of 3 election commissioners during the 2019 elections, was apparently also placed on the snoop list. This after Lavasa had flagged off alleged violations by the Prime Minister during election season. It gets more incredible. If the leak is to be believed, also on the list were the Prime Minister's own ministers. Prahlad Patel, the Minister of State for Jal Shakti,
मैं अश्विनी वैष्णव ईश्वर की शपथ लेता हूँ.
And in a fantastic irony, the new IT Minister, Ashwini Vaishnav, who just hours prior to the leak had stoutly rubbished charges of government-ordered surveillance on the floor of the Lok Sabha.
It is beyond dispute that the data has nothing to do with surveillance or with NSO, so there can be no factual basis to suggest that a use of the data somehow equates to surveillance.
The issue of timing often becomes a weapon in the hand of political opponents, and that's exactly the point which is being made by the government. Why is it that these revelations are coming just ahead of the parliament session where the government has big back plans for moving legislative business? Of course, the opposition is never ever going to accept this, which means the tug of war over the latest what is being called the Snoop Gate continues. In New Delhi, Pallavi Ghosh.
The next natural question that arises is, what is Pegasus? Why was it developed and where has it been used? Pegasus is an Israeli company spyware that was essentially meant for anti-terror operations which helped in close surveillance of suspects. Developed by NSO, this spyware can harvest data from the device it infects and transmit it back. It can secretly film a person through their phone's camera or record their conversations. Basically, if the spyware hits your device, you're being tracked 24/7. So when this is used not for the narrow purpose of terror and crime, it raises serious questions on the motivation of its use.
Perhaps the most powerful piece of spyware ever developed. Once Pegasus has wormed its way into your phone without you noticing, the spyware can turn your phone into a 24-hour surveillance device. So how does this work? It could happen by making you click on a malicious URL sent by an SMS to your phone, or by exploiting a security bug in voice calls through WhatsApp. And if your iPhone is your pride, know that the malware can enter through iMessages as well. Once installed, Pegasus can harvest any data from the device and transmit it back to the attacker. It can secretly film you through your phone's camera or activate the microphone to record your conversations. It can potentially access every information available on the phone, even encrypted chats and files. This is total surveillance of your life. And make no mistake, the spyware has been designed to avoid detection. Pegasus can do more than what even the owner of the device can. To avoid detection or the user's suspicion, this spyware sends schedule updates only to a CNC server. Further, this ingenious spyware is designed to evade forensic scrutiny, avoid detection by antivirus software, and to top it all, it can be destroyed by the attacker whenever needed. And all this goes without the phone user knowing what's going on inside his or her phone. Traces of the spyware may still be found even after a hard factory reset of the phone. Though the NSA group claims that it exclusively sells Pegasus to vetted governments and law enforcement and intelligence arms only, the Israeli tech firm is no stranger to controversies. It has now come to light that this notorious hacking software was used to spy on Saudi descendant and journalist Jamal Khashoggi's wife, fiancé and son months before he was murdered in October 2018. In June last year, an Amnesty report raised fingers at a Moroccan authority for surreptitiously inserting this spyware inside the phone of Omar Radi, a journalist convicted over a social media post. In December 2020, a report by the cybersecurity watchdog, the Citizen Lab at the University of Toronto, found that dozens of journalists at Al Jazeera network were targeted by this software. The lab attributed the unprecedented attack to Saudi Arabia and the UAE. To sum up, you could be spied on right now through your phone and you won't even know about it. With Chinjini Devvarman and Rajiv Kumar, Ritangshu Bhattacharya for CNN News 18.
So how do you keep yourself safe from cyber surveillance of this nature and keep your data secure? Here are some tips that have been given out by experts. First of all, frequently update your device. Don't ignore all those updates that come onto your device. Use them to ensure that your device is in fact secure. And these are all from Amnesty International, which has given out some of these tips on how to keep yourself secure from any such cyber attack. Next, to generate a strong password stored in encrypted form. So your password becomes extremely important. Don't be negligent about that just because you feel that you might forget the password. So keep it simple. No, you're not supposed to be doing that. Put on a two-factor authentication when you can. This is especially helpful because it also ensures that you get some sort of an alert if there is anybody trying to hack their way into your system. Review privacy settings, delete accounts you no longer use, and that happens quite often to many of us. So we generate some accounts and then we don't use them so often. It's happened in the past. Some of those social media accounts which one doesn't tend to use, those could actually be the chink in your armor and could allow for such infiltration to happen. So one has to be very particular about that. Now, secure your phone via complex screen lock, 8-digit PIN or alphanumeric code. This again is a means of ensuring that nobody is able to hack into your device to protect your online activities when using public Wi-Fi. That is one example, to use a VPN when you're out and about and using a public Wi-Fi. Meanwhile, choose apps very carefully. Only download from official app stores. Don't just go about using any app that you think is useful for you. Think before you click on an SMS, email, attachment. any of these could actually have a malware. So if you're suspicious of any email that has come to you, stop, think before you click on that link. Let me now go across to Kanishk Kaur. He's the founder of India Future Foundation. Kanishk is a cyber expert who will help us understand also how to keep our devices safe, how to keep our data safe. But before that, Kanishk, the big question is that in August 2017, the Supreme Court had said that right to privacy is a fundamental right. Does this kind of surveillance that we've seen through Pegasus a violation of that?
This is a violation of the right to privacy. Supreme Court gave a landmark judgment that right to privacy is fundamental right of citizens of India and it is guaranteed by the Constitution. Now, when you have third parties snooping into the citizens' data, that too of top journalists and opposition leaders, it gives a strong alarm that today your and my data is not safe. And we don't have a data protection bill. And just before the data protection bill comes into the picture, you have a large situation coming in where people's account is being snooped by agencies which are not part of Indian ecosystem but are sitting somewhere else.
Yes.
So you don't know where your data is heading. You don't know whatever access that you're given to government for your vaccination, would that data also be safe? Whatever communications you're having, with your family, is that safe? So it gives a strong alarm that your data can be end up being in wrong hands.
And Kanishk, you raised a very pertinent point there that here is a third party involvement. We don't know where that data is going. What are the potential dark sides of the data being leaked in such a nature?
See, a company like NSO is a private company. They can sell this to private contractors. They can sell it to other governments as well, right? So tomorrow you might have certain leaders or journalists being held to ransom, or they're being pushed into reporting something which they don't want to do. So all this is a big risk, and it's a risk to national security as well, because this company not only works with India, it works with 48 other governments, and many of those governments have been imperialist. Many of them are autocratic in nature. So for a country like India, which is a democracy, it's a big threat.
So Kanishk, if surveillance of this nature is illegal, but nobody knows who authorized it, then how is this issue to be addressed then?
See, I think an independent investigation should be carried out to find out who ordered this surveillance. And if surveillance was to be carried out, who authorized use of third parties. As per the Indian Section 69A, there are 10 agencies which can carry out surveillance in the name of national security. Now, all these 10 agencies need to seek prior approval from the Home Secretary. Right? These are Indian intelligence agencies. Now, if any of these Indian intelligence agencies are using these third parties for surveillance, right, they need to take appropriate approval. And if they are, allowing these parties to snoop into data, what kind of agreements they have with this company, that's also important to us. The law does not allow third parties, which are international agencies, spying agencies, to come into Indian territory and use that data, which could, impact our country.
Absolutely. So where does the accountability then lie, Kanishk?
I think the accountability lies with the government, that the government should come clear on this. They should order an investigation into what has been done and not just ignore, saying that, this is just hype which is being created. People who believe they have been under surveillance should get their mobile phones, their laptops, examined through cyber-forensic experts to find out malwares, trojans, or backdoors which have been installed on their systems. So they are able to find this evidence that their systems were compromised, or there were rootkits installed on their machines. So these are two steps. And the third is, very importantly, the Minister of IT should come out strongly and tell what is the mechanism they have taken in place to ensure that this doesn't happen again, right? And once you have the data protection bill coming in India, what is the kind of powers the government will exercise to snoop into our data, and how it protects the privacy of people once you have laws for data privacy and protection? That's also important.
Kanishk, one point that I want to understand from you, because a lot of people have raised that issue, that is this kind of surveillance only looking or listening into your chats, watching your every step, because they can use your camera to monitor you as well, at least in this Pegasus spyware. can they also plant data on you? Is that a possibility?
So, once you have a control of a device, you can manipulate information, you can listen to records, you can also modify. So this allows you to have both read and write operations. So if I have write operations over a device, I can not only get information from that device, I can also put information on that specific device, right? So you can help people accountable for something which they have not done. So I can plant, specific pictures. I can spark, specific data on that particular machine. So you can actually not only just intercept communication, you can make somebody else liable for a crime which was done by a third party. So it's a huge risk.
Kanishk, also the UN HRC, Human Rights Council, has also commented on this. They have said that there is a very narrow use for this kind of surveillance spyware, and that has in fact that has not been in keeping with what we've seen in this particular case of Pegasus. They have not kept up to that narrow surveillance for terrorists or criminals. And they have said that this brings us to the point of doubt and suspicion that already existed about the misuse of technology. Now, how does the international community come together to take a look at this? Because as you're rightly mentioning, there is a third party involved as well. And in the case of India, we've seen that it's not just politicians, journalists, activists, but even there are some ambassadors and envoys of other countries or high commissions and embassies that have been under surveillance as well. That can create a diplomatic issue as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. There have been issues which have come forward where prime ministers of neighboring countries have said that somebody from India is trying to snoop into their systems using NSO. So which can create a geopolitical issue for us. So at the UN, we should look at passing up, a law or an amendment saying that we should not allow such snooping to happen because it is dangerous for democracies to function. It can cause geopolitical conflict, and you should ban such organizations from, taking up contracts. So there should be a, amendment passed which says that, all the members of the UN are taking up a consideration that they will not allow a company like NSO to sign contracts with government or get into such deals where they are supplying information about citizens of the country to the ruling party. This is purely against the human rights.
Okay. All right. Kanishk, many thanks for joining us with those details and giving us an insight into what this spyware is actually like and how this matter can be addressed. With that, we're taking a very quick break. Up next, the Parliament session was disrupted today due to the snooping controversy. Is it likely to force a washout? That when we come back. Welcome back. The government has vehemently denied the allegations against it on Pegasus snooping. In fact, it's alleging that the opposition is using the issue to force a washout of the monsoon session of Parliament. But the opposition is demanding answers and even resignations. Arunima with all the lowdown from Parliament.
Opposition leaders of 4 parties standing outside Parliament, placards in hand, demanding why they were being spied upon and, more importantly, who was spying on them. Inside the Parliament, both houses were adjourned over the ruckus.
मेरा आप सभी से निवेदन है कि अपने अपने स्थान ग्रहण करिए और बहस में भाग लीजिए.
The government putting its explanation forward, insisting that the allegations were false and motivated.
इसमें सरकार का कोई ताल्लुक नहीं है. There is no government का even an iota of link is there in that. But in spite of that, if they want to raise through a proper procedure, to a proper rule, let them raise. Government has already made a suo motu statement. IT Minister has made it already.
But the opposition unrelenting, accusing the government of attacking the foundation of parliamentary democracy and threatening washout of entire session if a probe is not ordered.
इतने बड़े मुद्दे को लेकर हमारी मांग ये होते हैं, जब ये इल्जाम सीधे तौर पर हमारे गृह मंत्रालय पर लगता है तो गृह मंत्री को इस्तीफा देना चाहिए.
So the way this government has been spying and surveilling on everybody, this is something that has got to stop. We need some answers, and this is not something that is going to be brushed under the carpet.
Though the Rajya Sabha later agreed to hold a discussion on COVID, the Lok Sabha failed to transact any business for the second day in a row, getting adjourned for the day at 3 p.m. after repeated obstructions earlier. Government has called the opposition's Pegasus allegations an attempt at sensationalism, but the opposition continues to raise questions. Question number one, if we believe that the government did not authorize this snooping, then who really was responsible for hacking phones which have been found with traces of the Pegasus software? Was there a foreign agency involved? If so, should the government not order a probe into those who are hacking phones of Indians? In New Delhi, Arunima.
We are being spied upon is likely to be the refrain in Parliament this session, even as the government aims to clear several bills. Will that be possible? Tomorrow's session should give us a glimpse of that. That's it then for today. See you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.